The station smelled of metal and damp concrete, the kind of scent that clung to the night air. Claire pulled her coat tighter around herself as she hurried down the stairs, her heels clicking against the cold floor. Almost midnight. She hated working late, but her boss had insisted. The last train home was her only option. She glanced at the schedule board, 5 minutes until departure. Claire sighed, shifting her tote bag higher on her shoulder as she weaved through the scattered late-night commuters. A businessman on his phone, a young couple whispering to each other, an old man reading a tattered newspaper, the usual crowd. But then, something caught her eye. Near the platform's edge, an elderly man stood, gripping a heavy duffel bag in one hand, a small suitcase in the other. His frame was frail, his coat far too thin for the bitter air. He glanced around, looking lost. His suitcase wobbled, and he struggled to balance it. Claire hesitated. She was exhausted. She'd spent 12 hours in meetings, running on caffeine and stress. The train would be here soon. She had exactly 2 choices. 1, ignore the old man, get on the train, forget about it. 2, help him, risk missing the last ride home. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Always help when you can, Claire. You never know when you'll need it, too. Claire clenched her jaw. She'd regret this, she already knew. She took a breath and stepped toward the man. "Sir, do you need some help?" she asked, her voice gentle. The man's tired eyes lifted to hers. He blinked as if surprised someone had noticed him. Yes, thank you," he stammered. I think I'm at the wrong platform. I need the train to Millwood." Claire's stomach sank. Millwood was the opposite direction. "The last train for Millwood left 15 minutes ago," she said softly. "I'm sorry." His face fell. He squeezed the handle of his suitcase. "Oh, I see," he murmured. I must have misread the schedule." Claire felt a pang in her chest. "Do you have anyone you can call?" The man hesitated. His lips pressed into a thin line. "No, I don't have anyone." Silence. The train's distant hum vibrated through the platform, the rails trembling slightly. Claire glanced toward the tunnel. 2 minutes until departure. She turned back to the man. His shoulders slumped, his fingers gripping the suitcase handle like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. She had to make a decision. "Look," she said quickly, before she could change her mind. "This station has a waiting area upstairs. It's warm. I'll help you figure something out." The man blinked, as if the words didn't quite register. "But your train—" "It's fine," Claire interrupted. "Come on, let's go." Then something unexpected happened. As she reached for his suitcase, another voice cut through the air. "Hey, wait!" Claire turned sharply. A young man, probably in his late 20s, jogged toward them. He had dark curls peeking from under his hood and wore a messenger bag slung across his chest. "I overheard you," he said, a little out of breath. "If you need a ride to Millwood, I'm heading that way. I can drop you off." The old man's brows knitted together. He looked at Claire, unsure. Claire studied the stranger. He didn't look particularly threatening. Clean clothes, steady gaze, an air of sincerity. But could she really trust him? "Are you sure?" she asked cautiously. "Yeah," the guy nodded. "I live in Millwood. I work late shifts downtown, so I always take the night drive back." Claire turned to the old man. "What do you think?" The elderly man looked between them, then at the train rolling into the station. His choice was clear. The train hissed to a stop, its doors sliding open with a mechanical groan. Claire felt the pull, the easy way out. She could just step inside, sit down, and let the night swallow this moment. But she didn't move. The old man hesitated too, his fingers tightening around the suitcase handle. He looked at the young man who had offered a ride, then back at Claire, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Could he trust this stranger? Claire studied the man who had approached them. He was in his late 20s, dressed casually but neatly, with dark curls and sharp but kind eyes. He had no reason to offer help. Yet here he was. The train doors buzzed loudly, signaling their imminent closure. Claire made a decision. "Wait here," she told the older man. Then she stepped toward the younger one. "Do you have ID? Something that proves you're from Millwood." He blinked and then nodded. "Yeah, of course." He pulled out his wallet and showed her his driver's license. Michael Lane, address, Millwood, NY. Claire examined it carefully. "Look," Michael said, lowering his voice. "I get it, the world's a mess, you don't know me. But my mom raised me to help people when I can." He gestured toward the old man. "I just don't want him stranded here alone." Claire's instincts told her he was genuine, but still, she wasn't about to send a vulnerable man off with a stranger. "I'll come too," she said. Michael raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know me." "Exactly," Claire shot back, "and neither does he." The train doors shut behind them with a final clunk, rolling away into the night. She'd just given up her only ride home. Michael chuckled, shaking his head. "All right, fair enough." The old man, who had been silent, finally spoke. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," Claire reassured him. "Let's just get you somewhere safe, okay?" Minutes later, the three of them piled into Michael's car, an old but well-kept sedan. The city lights blurred past. As they drove, the hum of the heater filling the silence. "So," Michael said after a while, glancing at the rearview mirror. "What's your story, sir?" The old man sighed. "My name is Walter. My wife passed away a few months ago. Tonight, I was traveling to see my granddaughter for the first time since the funeral. I must have misread the schedule." Claire's heart clenched. Walter had been standing on that platform, lost and alone, trying to make it to family. Michael nodded. "I'm sorry for your loss." Walter smiled faintly. "She always handled the travel plans. I was never good at this kind of thing." Silence settled in the car, not awkward, but heavy. Michael turned onto the highway. "How old's your granddaughter?" 8, Walter said. "Brightest little thing. She called me last week. Told me she's been practicing a song on the piano just for me." His voice cracked. "I couldn't miss it." Claire glanced at Michael. They both knew this wasn't just about a missed train. Walter had been feeling the weight of life without his wife, navigating everything alone. "You won't miss it," Claire said firmly. Walter gave her a grateful nod. The drive to Millwood took just under an hour. As they pulled up to a small house with the porch light on, the front door swung open. A woman in her 30s stepped out, worry etched on her face. "Grandpa." Walter barely had time to step out before his granddaughter bolted past her mother, launching herself into his arms. "I thought you weren't coming," she sniffled. "Of course I'm here," Walter whispered. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Claire felt warmth spread in her chest. This moment almost didn't happen. Walter turned back to them, his eyes damp. "I don't know how to thank you both." "You already have," Claire said with a smile. Michael chuckled. "Just promise me you'll check the train schedule twice next time, all right?" Walter laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. "I will." As they pulled away, Claire stared out the window, reflecting. She had almost ignored him. She had almost let herself be too tired, too distracted, too focused on getting home. But instead, she made a choice. And sometimes, the smallest. Choices change everything. What would you have done in Claire's place? Would you have walked past Walter, assuming someone else would help? Or would you have taken that risk? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming, thought-provoking stories. You never know, you might be the next person faced with a moment that truly matters.